Everybody, welcome to another episode of the LitRPG Podcast, episode number 64 of the show. I'm Ramon Mejia. I'm here to bring you the latest LitRPG news, reviews, and of course, author interviews. This week I have 7 new LitRPG reviews for you, beginning with A Slave in the Locklands, which is the weirdest Noob book 2. After that, it's going to be Fjorgyn, The Deep Below. After that, The Vale of Three Wolves, a LitRPG adventure, Elements of Wrath Online Book 2. Then after that, it's going to be Endgame, a LitRPG adventure, The Crucible Shard Book 7, which is the last in that series. And then after that, it's going to be The Glitch Fiends, Part 2, Hell's Glitch Book 3. After that, it's going to be Extinction Phase 1, a LitRPG military horror. And last but not least, it'll be Side Quest. And of course, I'm going to show though with LitRPG news. And a little bit of news, we're going to get in with Michael Antonoff and the latest book in his series for the Perimeter Defense Magic Dome books, the folks who translate that from Russian and English. I have announced this week that the final book in the Perimeter Defense series is up for pre-order and will be available for download October the 11th. The fourth book in the series is called A Game with No Rules. Also in a little bit of news, we have William D. Oran, whose birthday it happens to be when I'm recording this. So happy birthday, man. Author of the Other Life trilogy and Supercells on Superhero series. He started a Patreon. He's offering some really neat rewards for supporters, including early drafts of novels, special artwork, beta reader spots, and entire book outlines before they're even written, and much, much more. So go check out his Patreon at patreon.com/William D. Oran. We'll have a link in the show notes for you folks. Also, Alarong Kong this week and last actually, he's actually dropped some very funny, humorous videos to promote the upcoming LitRPG Gala in Atlanta, Georgia. It's really just him goofing around, doing some character work, but they're really quite funny and entertaining. He's only posted one of them on YouTube, so that's the one you're seeing currently. But he has the second one on his Facebook page, so go check that out. The LitRPG Gala is set for September the 2nd at the Sidebar in Atlanta, from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. again on September the 2nd. So I'll be there. Hopefully we'll see you there too. Also, in Little Bit of News, we have Harmon Cooper. He's publishing the first novel in a new series next week called The Last War of Ungaia. It is set for a release of August the 15th, 2017. He's also planning to release the audiobook version at the same time. To celebrate this, he and the narrator Jeff Hayes have put together a trailer with some very interesting background music, which we'll give you a chance to listen to right now.
They would torture me once they found me holed up in my home with a table pressed against the door. So I did what I had to do. The water near us stirs, and I glance to it. Shit! The raft overturns as a giant scale-covered tail whips at the water. I crash through the waves and catch sight of something enormous moving past me. I instinctively go for my sword, ignoring the sting from the cold salt water. Wolf! I surface, take a deep breath, spit out some of the water, and glance right to see Wolf's feet splashing against the surface. He yelps as he's dragged under and I swim towards him, my heart beating rapidly as I try to get a grasp on what's happening. I surface again, find myself near the overturned raft, climb on to get my bearings, and gasp as a sea dragon lifts out of the water and ducks back in. Sea dragon, level 12. Wolf is sort of dog paddling now, yipping and trying his damnedest to swim over to the overturned raft.
And isn't that interesting, folks? Now, the music is actually just for the trailer. If you're not the type of person who likes music through their audiobook, apparently not as audible. Apparently they have some rule that doesn't allow background music to play through an audiobook. So that music is really just for the trailer, just for you folks as a special, thing. But of course, Jeff Hayes always does a great job as an audiobook narrator. Okay, on to some books that came out this week. Haven't had a chance to review yet. Beginning with Stratus Online Awakening, which is going to come out on August the 11th, which is when most people are going to see this podcast. I had to apologize to the author. He actually sent me an advanced reader copy so I can get him a review when it came out, and I just couldn't get to reading it. 7 of their novels this week that came up before him, unfortunately. So definitely be on the podcast next week, though. Also, that came out this week, but have an anxious review. Life Reset, New Era Online Book 1. This one is actually one that comes from the Railroad. I've read the Railroad version of it. Really enjoyed it. So go check it out. Go grab it if you haven't had a chance to. But I'll be giving it for review next week. Also, Beyond All Expectations, Emerilia Book 8. 8th book in a wonderful series. Have good expectations of it. Also, they came out this week. Dead Mech Walking, a mech LitRPG novel. Sounds cool. And last, but well, I'm not reviewing this one, but Rules-Free VR MMO Life Volume 5 Power Base. I'm just letting you know that it's actually out. It didn't have a pre-order, but it is available for those folks who enjoy that particular series. I did not enjoy it. A little too rapey and tortury from the main character for my personal taste. But I know some people like darker stories like that, and that's cool. But I'm not going to review it, so just letting you guys know that it has come out, though. Okay. In new LitRPG audiobooks, there's just one this week, 46 from Robert Bevan, which is a collection, the fourth collection, I should say, of 6 short stories in the Caverns and Creatures series. All fun short stories. They're just fun. And they're all independent stories, though, so they're not tied directly into the main storyline from the Critical Flare series. They're all just short, funny, like usually hilariously funny. But they also don't do introductions of any of the characters. So they do assume that you've at least read the first book in that series, but they're still very funny, even if you haven't. So there you go. And upcoming LitRPG. This is where I just read off the stuff that's coming out for the rest of August and September. Skip ahead. It is a list, and I'll tell you, I've been mentioning the new items to that list, though. On the 12th of August, it's going to be Reincarnation RPG, Part 3, a short story. That one's new. Also, on the 15th of August, coming up quick, Pharaoh Book 4. On the 15th of August, The Last War of Ungaya. On the 20th of August, The Shaman's Revenge, Way of the Shaman Book 6. 22nd of August, Shards of Reality, a LitRPG Adventure. 28th of September, skipping all the way to end of September, On the Lost Continent, Alter Game Book 2. On September the 30th, this one is, again, relatively new to the list, Infinite Reality, Daggerland Online Novel 1, a LitRPG Adventure. And, of course, on October the 11th, we just talked about A Game with No Rules, Perimeter Defense, Book 4. That's it. On to new releases and reviews. Okay, new releases and reviews. We're going to begin with A Slave in the Locklands, the second book in the Weirdest Noob series, written by Arthur Stone. Okay, this one is 405 pages, $5.92, not available on Kindle Unlimited. The author's description is very relatively vague, and the novel actually does a really good job of giving you a summary of what happened in the last book. Basically, the main character is trapped in this game. He can't log out, although he can kind of pull away a little bit and do edits to his character so he is not recognized in a lot of ways. So part of this storyline is going to be him remaining secret until he's powerful enough to basically take on the larger world and guild powers. And again, this is just a fun novel. It doesn't take itself very seriously. It makes fun at a lot of established LitRPG novels, and even takes some of their storylines and twists them and makes fun of them and just has a good time with them. It's a fun grinding adventure with lots of conversations about leveling theory and express game mechanics. There's a lot of crafting in this particular novel. There's also a lot of technical game talk in the story, not just detailed skill level, spell, or item descriptions, but full-on conversations between characters about leveling theory and video game development concepts, even actual developer conversations from the game developers. And that is all sometimes very technical, and it can be a turnoff for some people. And if it is, you probably would have discovered that in reading book 1. But me personally, I enjoy all that technical stuff. It helps give me insight into like the game itself and the things that are possible in this world, which I'm always a fan of knowing more of. The novel really did start out right in the action. Ross, the main character, is killing mobs in a dungeon with his newly acquired centipede pet. He's helping a friend of his, Digits, try to level up. And there's a nice rundown of what the main character's abilities are, what makes him so special. From the 3 to 10% mark, it is basically the game company's point of view looking for the main character because he's creating artificial intelligence wave problems within the MMO, basically. But at the same point, they're also giving you a rundown on what happened in the last novel. So it's the author's way of kind of giving you a summary within context of the game. So it's interesting, and it kind of does the job. Starting at 20%, though, is that when we start to get into the actual main storyline of the story, where Ross is disguised as a woman, he's kidnapped by a high-powered guild, the JP Guild, and the artificial intelligence in the MMO initiates a new global event to give the main character a chance to escape. And this big event is the Slave in the Lost Land quest series, which actually doesn't officially start until the 30% mark, when the main character is and all the other players who are caught in this event around this area are forced into slavery as miners. And at this point, crafting becomes a big issue and a big useful issue for the players, because they're stripped of all their gear, they're stripped of all their weapons, all their, epic loot items, whatever the case is. And so they are sort of starting out again, which means it's a very interesting way of knocking down the main player character's power and having him go through that power curve again. So very interesting way to do that. It does remind me a lot of the way there's some in book 1, where crafting is kind of the big focus for a lot of this quest chain, because that's the case here. Of course, he's also a miner, so there are those parallels between the stories. And of course, the main character is using his crafting abilities, which he's just starting to explore, to power himself up and to make friends and to make allies, and so that they can complete this big quest chain from the Slave in the Lost Lands quest series. Overall, fun series, fun novel. Again, pokes fun at established literature stories, really detailed game stuff, and I had a good time. It's I'm always a big fan of when crafting is actually useful in a story, not just a thing. If you like book 1 in this series, you're definitely like book 2. So good for me. Score 7 out of 10. Okay, on to next story. I'm going to say it, Fjorgyn. Fjorgyn, rather. I keep messing it up. From R.J. Castelline. And this always makes me laugh whenever I have to say this novel series and the author's name, because the author was nice enough, after I gave the first review, to send me the correct way of saying both titles. And so I always copy and paste it. I have to go look for the email every time and copy and paste the correct pronunciation in the show notes. And that always makes me laugh, because I literally asked for it and he did it. So good job. But okay. This novel is 306 pages, $3.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. This novel, just as a quick recap, what happened in the last novel, the main character essentially wakes up in a real life version of his favorite MMO game. He's basically, I don't remember if he died or was just reincarnated or whatever. I think he died, but he's reincarnated into this new world of Fjorgyn, that is essentially a copy of his favorite MMO. So he was a big player there, so he has a ton of knowledge there, but he has to start over at level 1, I believe. In book 1, he was captured as a slave. The slaves escaped, and they're starting out in book 2, having just gotten to the keep where they're hopefully going to be safe, and that's where the story starts out in. There is also a quick reminder from the author from the very first pages that the main character is gay and that he has a lover. I thought this was absolutely hilarious. I know it's not meant to be funny, but to me, it's like a huge warning sign to readers saying, this character is gay, so if you have an issue with that, you can bail out now. And that's what this like literally this sentence is for me, because I covered the story originally when the first book when it came out, and there were a lot of negative reviews about like readers being surprised that the main character turned out to be gay and that he wanted to find someone to love, and I feel like this is a response to those particular reviews saying, look guys, I'm just letting you know in advance, the main character is gay, so if you have an issue with that, I'll see you later from here. Have a good time. So funny to me. But just to be clear, there's no sex in the story. The most graphic that it gets is like some statements like, for hours we explored each other as two people in love do. And that's kind of it. I mean, there's kissing and holding hands and hugging, but that's it. I mean, that portion of the story is relatively minor to the overall theme of the novel. It's just someone who's of a different sexual orientation, and that's all it really becomes. The second book in the series is quite good. I actually like it more than the first book, and I really did like the first book a lot. The author took all the things I liked about book 1 and improved them, but he's also adjusted the few things that I didn't care for in book 1. There's action, adventure, there's crafting, there's town building, and more to enjoy in the story. So good job there, RJ. Again, I liked book one. There were a few points that I thought could have improved, like sudden plot shifting that happened. There's a lack of action, in my opinion, in book one. There are very extensive character sheets at the end of each chapter in book one, practically, and all that was improved in book two. There's tons of action. There are full character sheets. They appear much less often. Instead, the author just does more individual references and descriptions for items and spells and people, and they're sprinkled very heavily throughout the entire novel, so there's plenty of game mechanics in there as well. And something that I was really happy to see in book two that was kind of hinted at in the end of book one is the town building. I was like, I'm always a big fan of like just new, interesting game mechanics to come up. The escaped slaves have settled in an abandoned keep outside their enemy's lands, and the story is super detailed about what things they would need to be done to found a village in a medieval society, which is basically, it's a medieval society with the benefit of magic and game mechanics that everybody's aware of. Like, everybody knows that these game mechanics exist, just they don't call them game mechanics because for them it's reality. But as far as the main character goes, he knows all these things about the game, including alchemies, recipes for whatever, because he was a high level character in the in our version of that MMO game, if that makes sense. But this even in town building, keeping and improving the keep, there are game mechanics there. There's an RTS strategy kind of view of improving the keep. The main character becomes the owner of the keep, and he, as the keep levels, he has the ability to invest settlement points into various abilities and various options to improve the keep, which I thought was really fun and interesting. It's something that I've seen before, but I'm still happy to see it again because it provides a different game mechanic opportunity in the story than just killing stuff and leveling and getting new spells. Like, this is another aspect of gameplay that I'm always happy to see because it provides a break from just action. So I enjoyed it. And again, the details about what a medieval society would need to do to survive, also very thorough, and it plays well into the same mechanic. However, the best part of the novel that I liked, absolutely, was the description of herbalism and potion making. I think they're the best I've ever read in every novel ever, and I was super excited to read it. They got me so excited. I'm a sucker for crafting, so I'll put that out there. I know that, but just reading these potion descriptions and how the main character makes them just made me want to go make a potion or sign up for Professor Michael's potion making class. I was more than happy to read them. I think they're great. For me, for those portions alone, it's worth the purchase price for me. But again, that is sort of also the extent of the crafting in the series. Like, there are other references to like people doing other things, but as far as like detailed stuff, this is kind of it, but it's really good. Also the combat in the story. There is a lot of more combat. Like, there are three huge, like, long combat kind of dungeon runs in the novel. There are, of course, more minor ones in there as well, but there are three big ones. And the combat is very descriptive. However, it is very strategically told, which means there are descriptions of people saying they're going to do things. Like, the main character switches from DPS to healing, and he's calling out a bunch of spells that he's using, and he's just saying what the other characters in his party are doing as well, like their abilities or their ability to draw aggro or taunt, whatever. And so that is the kind of combat that's generally described. It's less graphically descriptive. It's less, I throw a fireball spell and I feel the flames lick my fingers as it leaves my hand and arcs across the room to smash into the face of the surprised goblin, and I hear his screams of pain and terror as he's cooked alive. That kind of stuff is less there. It's excuse me, it's more along the, I cast healing spell 3 and then I cast nature's root, that kind of stuff. So just be aware of that. It was slightly less sad than that I thought it was going to be, but again, it's not bad. It's just is what it is. Because again, this is more team-based combat. Where the novel really shines, though, is in the emotional and social character development that the main character has, and his relationship between him and the other characters, including his partner or his lover Clifford, and all the other members of the groups that they say basically as ex-slaves, and the growing village. Like, those moments of conversations and those events are all very well described, and there's real emotional impact. And those conversations have weight, and their relationships matter. within the context of the story, and it matters to the main character, and you can tell that. Like, those things are super detailed, and I don't know that I could write that well as far as those social and emotional aspects go. So I always admire any author who can do that stuff very well, and it is done rather well here. Overall, good story, good novel. Had a fun time reading it, especially those potion making scenes. Gets a score of 7 out of 10. There you go. Okay, on to The Vale of Three Wolves, a LitRPG adventure, Elements of Wrath Online Book 2, written by J.B. Gardner and J.A. Cipriano. They've written, I think, another LitRPG series. You also reckon J.A. Cipriano from some other great LitRPG novels. This is 386 pages, $4.99, available on Kindle Unlimited. I will read you the author's description because it's rather short. When Max and Kayla embarked on an epic quest line few have ever completed, they'll find themselves trapped face to face with the primordial forces of darkness. Now, to return back to the larger game world, they must complete the trials and vanquish the darkness from this pristine Holy Land before all is lost. There's just one catch. If they don't complete it within the time limit, they'll not only lose their chance of finishing it, but they may lose their characters as well. So there you go. And that's a pretty decent description of the story. For me, this story went by in a snap. And that's always a good sign because it is not small. It's 386 pages, and yet it went by so quickly. I know that I enjoyed it a lot. It's not a complicated story either. It's really delightfully straightforward. The in-game story is about two people on a quest to unlock the power of the Rings of Promise they got in book 1. And the second storyline is the real life story for the main character. It's well told, and it also develops a lot of good background information and creates empathy for him. I liked it a lot, actually. This is probably one of my favorite novels of the week, just because it was so easy to read, and it was just, I didn't have to think about game mechanics or if it's LitRPG or not. It was just straightforward, and I could enjoy it almost as a casual read. The comments were in with good MMO tactics. There's tons of game details and game mechanics. There's even a bit of romance, which I actually really enjoyed as well, because it provided a different focus. Instead of just killing things for the sake of killing things and leveling up and all that stuff, there's actually a point within this novel. It's also not just about gaining power from the Rings of Promise. It's also about two people beginning their journey in a relationship with each other. And I thought it was really cute and adorable in all the ways. But it's also, for them, it's learning what it means to be in a more adult relationship. And again, really streamlined. You don't even have to read book 1 to enjoy this one, which I thought was really nice as well. It generally a nice treat for me. Score of 7 out of 10. Okay, on to Endgame, a LitRPG adventure, the Crucible Shard book 7. It is 198 pages. It is $3.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. I will read you the author's description. The epic conclusion to the Crucible Shard. The war for control of the multiverse is finally coming to a head. What started for Liam as a game has become, for King Liam, something far more personal. A fight for the home he has made for himself and for those he cares for. This conclusion to the saga brings more of what has defined the Crucible Shard series: hard decisions and complex choices as the lines between hero, anti-hero, and villain blur even more. Okay. This is the end, folks, for this series, and it's a little sad, but it's also happy because now the author can move on to some other series that I believe he's been working on as well. It's the last novel in the Crucible Shard series, and it's been a really long, sometimes a very weird journey through this series sometimes. But this one does wrap it up satisfactorily. All the threads from the other novels, they all come together, and you get to finally see Elora's master plan, who's been portrayed in a lot of the other novels as the villain. You get all the characters from all the other novels. They come back for at least like a little tiny guest spot, including like the main character's brother, Tommy. He shows up for just to say, oh, this is what happens with him, basically. But again, it's satisfying. At least it's not a perfect ending. There are turns in the story that I didn't see coming, which is always interesting. And it's not a happy ending. It's not necessarily a happy ending for everybody, I should say. But you can even say it's messy sometimes, but it is what it is. And I think that's part of the story, in that life isn't neat. sometimes people make hard decisions, or they make choices that works for them but not for everybody else, and they have to live with the consequence. And that's part of being a real live adult. And I think there's a quote at the end of the novel that I thought really encapsulated maybe the author's feelings on the series, but definitely I think epitomizes what this novel is. At the end of the novel, one of the main characters says, "I know it's not the best ending. I tried, I really tried, but most alternatives were so much worse." And that's kind of a good summary for the entire novel as a conclusion to the series. As a fiction story, I really enjoyed it. I did. But again, I committed myself to kind of following this journey, even though some of the novels got really weird and twisted and weren't amazing. I had already kind of fallen, I want to say fallen in love, but I fallen in at least in like with the novel series that I knew I was going to finish it out. And for me, this is a nice ending. It was satisfying. I know what happens. There are no loose threads anywhere. And as a science fiction story, it would easily get a 7 out of 10 for me. However, this is labeled as a LitRPG, and there are no game mechanics in the story. And this, I think the closest thing you get to it is like the main character has game vision glasses that lets him see like a character name above anybody's head. That's it. They're popping around from world to world in this multiverse, and they go to a lot of different places: a superhero world, like a core world, a horror world, sci-fi world, a bunch of things like that. But the main game world, the Crucible, is visited very rarely, and there's nothing really that happens there that would make it LitRPG. So I have to be fair in how I rate these novels. And so just personally, I had a good time with it. But as a LitRPG novel, there is none, so it gets a score of 4 out of 10. And I have to be fair with that, just because I know later on in this podcast, I have to give other people that same kind of score for similar reasons. And it would be unfair, just because I like this novel so much, to give it a different score based on it being LitRPG. So there it is. Okay, next is The Glitch Fiends, Part 2, Hell's Glitch, Book 3, written by Bedlart Wright. Okay, this is 303 pages, $3.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. I will read you the author's description. Never fight alone again. Sam continues his frightening descent into Fulton Miller's horrifying virtual reality role-playing game. Now Sam must deal with powerful new enemies inside the dark castle of the fallen kingdom of Misaiji, a kingdom once known for magic but now known as a cursed death trap. Sam must improve his skills in order to traverse this deadly new area and combat its savage secret bosses. Not only that, but there's still the possibility of a glitch fiend attack at any moment. Sam must use all the resources at his disposal, including serving contracts, weapon augmentation set upgrades, enhanced pyromancies, and secret and NPC allies. Outside of the game, developer Alex looks for an opportunity to save everyone from Fulton Miller's mad experiment. Both Sam and Alex work desperately to survive, with neither having the time to wonder just how they'll overcome such dangerous odds. So there you go. The novel starts off just where part 1 ended, so it really is a part 2 to it. There's plenty of detailed character sheets, item descriptions, power upgrades, all the things you've mentioned in the author description. They're there. The fight scenes are really good. If you like book 1, you're going to like book 2. It's more of the same. For me, however, I didn't really fall in love with book 1 or book 2. And so it is more the same for me, in that this novel hasn't really resonated with me. Now, it might be the fact that the novels are inspired by the Dark Soul game series, and that just was never my cup of tea. I played it for 20 hours and then I put it down, as opposed to like the RPG games that I play, like Last Horizon Zero Dawn. I played that for easily 100 hours. And so for whatever reason it is, I just never connected to the main character. And so for the entire time I'm reading these, they're not bad, but they're not for me, I think. And that's fine. On paper, this should be my story. Action, adventure, in-game fights, plenty of powers and abilities. But for some reason, it just doesn't connect. And that's the way, rolls sometimes. For me, it gets a score of 6 out of 10. So there you go. But again, if you like the first book, second book, you'll like this one. Okay, next, Extinction Phase 1, a LitRPG military horror story. Written by Manny Sims. The author of LitRPG Freaks is also credited on Amazon as an author. However, I basically only realized it now, even though the name's another other LitRPG series, that's a publisher name. LitRPG Freaks is a publisher name, even though it's I looked up their website. They describe themselves as a collective. They actively recruit authors saying, "Would you like us to publish your novel?" So I'm like, so they're a publisher, which I don't know why I didn't realize it, but you know. It is 300 pages, $3.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. I will read you the author's description. I'm going to read you my description because that one's just too long. Basically, the main character is an adrenaline junkie. He is done all of the hang gliding, anything you can think of, but he's getting bored with his life. It's a setup very similar to what happened in Lion's Quest, and that a game development company is taking extreme sports fanatics and soldiers who are used to adrenaline pumping and making them beta testers for their ultra amazing, awesome game. In this instance, their game has been killing people, accidentally, apparently, according to the very beginning of the novel. And so they're using, I want to say higher class people, but brains that are used to the adrenaline to try to combat that and try to perfect their virtual reality MMO kind of game. And that's kind of the setup for the story. For me, though, this is a seriously fractured novel. There's no other way to say about it. It has a really great beginning. I mean, it's really nice. But then it turns into something that feels like it was really just edited all the heck or mashed up with a bunch of other stories from different authors, and it doesn't mesh well. And so even though it is LitRPG, those things disappear and they come back, and then it turns into a bunch of weird stuff, which I'll get into. But again, I'll start at the beginning. The first 10% of the novel really does remind me of the setup for Lion's Quest. A bored extreme athlete is recruited by a VR game company to test their amazing new game, except that it's group testing in this case. Again, great, well written, I gotta say. That first 10%, it makes me empathize with the character. There's a wonderful scene in there that I thought was one of the most well done, and it establishes a lot of empathy for the main character very quickly, because prior to that, he just seems like a bored rich guy. Or a bored extreme athlete. But with this one scene at a diner where he's talking to this older waitress about how he's feeling, it and the way he treats her with respect, it just, I'm like, okay, I feel for you now, dude. Good job, author. From then on, from the 11 to 24% mark, there's some really good virtual reality VR RPG stuff. I mean, seriously good details. There's a ton of details about all the class systems, all the cool game system stuff. I mean, there's this list of class information as the main character gets into the game with his testing crew. Everyone has to decide what kind of class they're going to be, and so the author does a great job describing it. All the classes are very military oriented with cool abilities, specializations, and the early portion of their exploration of this VR game world is really well done. They expressed the game mechanics, and it was a truly enjoyable experience up until the 24% mark, though. After that, you basically find out that none of that stuff you just read about really matters whatsoever. I mean, almost none of it is ever mentioned again in the novel, and certainly none of those abilities you ever see again. Even though they're described really well and they're cool, it's like someone decided that's too much game stuff, and they cut it out. But we'll get to that in a minute. From the 24% mark to the 42% mark of the story, it takes this really weird horror novel twist, because they're still in the game. At the 24th mark, they're just finishing off one section of the game, and they're traveling through a forest. And from there on, at 25% mark, it takes a weird horror twist. Like almost all the game mechanics go out the window, with the exception of a choose your own adventure kind of choice system, where it's like, do you want to go down the path or go up to the beach, or do you want to leave the house or stay in the house? That's the only extent of it for the next 25% mark. 25% of the novel. It becomes like this weird horror novel about aliens that come to Earth and turn everyone into skin balls and use their muscle fibers to make spaceships. And it's an honest attempt at being a horror, but it just falls flat for me. It's just weird. It's a weird insert. And to me, it almost feels like somebody had some story sitting around, or they collaborated with a horror author and then decided, oh, this is good enough. And they kind of dropped it in. It really does feel that was the case. And it just feels weird. And then the main character has some sort of seizure, and he's pulled out of the game, and that ends that portion of the virtual reality story. And then it shifts to a different storyline, a real life storyline where some rich family is trying to develop and spread a mind control code through this virtual reality game, except that they're actually killing testers. And it turns into like this internal conspiracy about the game, one game owner owning it, and the other game owner doesn't, and what the family wants to do with it, make it into like a virtual weapon. And it's just another weird aspect of the story that doesn't really fit in to what was established in that first, section of the novel. And again, then it jumps back into the game. 50% mark to the 70% mark. Again, relatively good game stuff. It's that same test group of soldiers and extreme athletes. They finally get to test the actual game Extinction, which apparently they weren't doing before. And that game is actually reminds me a lot of Fallout, in that it's a post-apocalyptic game where aliens have come and conquered, but a lot of the aspects of that particular game are like survival oriented. And you could also kind of do whatever you want to, but you have to work at it. And so I like that game world a lot. But again, all the stuff there's quests, there's weapons, there's a ton. I mean, there's literally paragraphs of a backstory for these aliens and for this world and what happened there, and it literally doesn't matter again. Like as soon as the 71% mark hits, when another character in the story has another seizure and he's pulled out, or like something happens, literally none of that matters. Like, does not at all whatsoever. And so all that work just felt wasted to me, which is really sad. And again, after that, the focus of the story shifts again to another weird kind of context where the wounds that are happening to the testers are showing up in real life. Not even real as real wounds, but like someone gets a head wound, they die. And there's like a holographic virtual hole in their head, or they get stabbed in the heart and they'll die, or go into a coma. And again, it's a virtual hole that the doctors press and it's not there, and all their body functions the same, but their heart has stopped working. And it's never explained like technically or scientifically like what's happening. So we're like, magic VR stuff. But it's just weird. And then it shifts around into like the evil lady who's inserting the brain inertia code, tries to kill all the testers in game, and the main character has to go in and save them. And then she eventually gets like these weird coded ghost powers to stop the actual game in real life, or to stop the main character from helping them. And like I said, it gets really weird and very much not LitRPG at all. And so for me, this novel is technical RPG. It is. It hits enough of the points that I think about. Everybody's aware of the game world. There is technically character progression in powers and in levels, even though they don't really mean anything. And it's enough of the novel that they're huge chunks of it. And so if you check them out, the novel would be different. And so for me, it's technical RPG. It's just that it's a super fractured story. And there are hints that this was a much larger game sections of the story that were super LitRPG. Like there are literally sentences in the story that refer to things that are not in the final edited edition, like use of powers, or gaining particular weapons or whatever. And you could tell like, oh, this is an edited story where somebody took some stuff out and they decided to go in a different direction than actually being LitRPG, and that's super frustrating. Because it's either that or somebody decided to change the story. So either LitRPG Freaks, as the publisher, decided to edit it differently, or the author did, or whatever the case was. But it was either, again, edited all to heck, or it was mashed with some other stories, like a horror story and a tech conspiracy thing. And this is the final result. And it's just kind of frustrating because the beginning was really good and it was engaging. And it just made the rest of the novel that much more disappointing because I had to force myself to finish this. And it just getting worse and worse and worse the more I read. And it was just sad and disappointing. So for me, it gets a score of 3 out of 10. So, I mean, and it's still LitRPG, so that says something. Okay, on to the last story, Side Quest, written by Christopher Kearns. His name's really light on the cover art title. Okay, it is 342 pages. It is $2.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. I will read you the author's description. A washed-up gamer, his missing team, 4 strange VR worlds, and one last chance. Welcome to SideQuest. Falling from Grace leaves a mark on leaves a mark even in virtual reality. No one knows that better than Mitch Mantalk, an ex-gamer phenomenon now scraping by the back alleys of Skirmish, the most popular virtual reality game in 2055. When his mentor reveals that Mitch's old team, a ragtag band of gamers with more baggage than bullets, has vanished, Mitch knows he's their only chance to get them home alive. Now, all he has to do is track down his own teammates in a series of unknown virtual worlds, defeat an undefeatable artificial intelligence program, and find his way back in one piece. No big deal. So there we go. I think the author originally, when I was reading it, when I read it, before he gave me, he originally kind of marketed this as LitRPG. In the final Amazon version of this description, he actually marketed this as an exciting sci-fi adventure that brings you along the ride as our heroes fight, sneak, and bark his way through a collection of VR game worlds. So he's not actually marketing as LitRPG on Amazon. However, he has posted in the LitRPG Facebook groups, I believe all of them, as a LitRPG novel. And he also sent it to me as a LitRPG novel. So that's what I'm actually going to be judging it on. Again, it is 342 pages, $2.99, available on Kindle Unlimited. And again, full disclosure, the author gave me an early review copy. I purchased it as soon as it came out. And again, the idea of the story, the premise, is really kind of neat. A retired virtual reality first-person shooter player has to save his old team by traveling through a multiverse of game worlds. Not bad. However, the execution doesn't really work out, at least not as a LitRPG story. The entire beginning of the story, from like the 1 to 12% mark, was hard to get through for me. And part of this is just like my personality and things I'm interested in. And the other part of it, that the author asks the reader to suspend his, suspend his disbelief or whatever, I forgot the phrase, basically believe a lot of the stuff, the premise, without much explanation or it being super logical. I'm going to give you the examples of what I'm talking about. First of all, the author would have you, as the reader, accept that a single virtual reality game could be popular enough to be played by daily by 70% of the world's population for the last 15 years. And I'm like, I could probably accept that portion of it just as, okay, whatever. But he's also setting up as this game is so popular that there's an entire worldwide industrial complex and millions of people that depend on this game being around to provide them with income. And in that respect, I can see that he's trying to mirror what the Oasis is in Ready Player One. I think part of the description I got was it's supposed to be a combination of Ready Player One and Guardians of the Galaxy. So I kind of see what he's trying to set up. But there is no foundation for it. Like, there's no setup of like, this is how virtual reality became popular and this one rose above the rest because of this, and like nobody's ever been able to conquer it. Like, it just seems rather illogical that one first-person shooter game could be that popular for 15 years through 70% of the population. So that was hard for me to accept in the first place. And then there's also the premise of the main character essentially being a sports god. The same way in modern sports, there's a trope, there's like a story movie trope where, you know, the sports star retired, but they pull him out of retirement to help out his team to get this one, you know, goal or championship or whatever the case is. And that's part of what the premise is, except that I don't like sports. And so that was appealing to me in the first place. And then there's also the portion of the story, the beginning part of it, where it's the main character at the height of his popularity, making millions of dollars every single game, just quits suddenly after his team loses the championship to some, you know, game glitch. And I'm like, why would anybody do that? That just seems weird. And I mean, it has to kind of happen that way for the story to continue on, but it didn't make sense to me as a human, I guess. Let's see. Additionally, there's a ton of overhype about how great this VR first-person shooter is and the esports industry. And again, it reads more like a sports movie. And again, the final bit of the premise that you have to accept to continue on with the novel is essentially that in this world where virtual reality is just a helmet and a bodysuit in a VR pod, nobody can help this lost team. None of the game makers, none of the game designers, none of the programmers can find this team that was sent in this virtual reality realm. Even though they're the coders, they're the owners and the programmers, they can't find them on their own. And of course, these same people can't be solved. The problem can't be solved by simply unplugging some servers. Nor can any of the people be saved by taking off the team members' virtual reality or their helmets, because nobody knows who they are in the world. Not even their friends, family, wives, girlfriends, whatever. and that they have to be saved by the main character because they're giving him virtual items that he has to hand them inside the virtual reality game for them to leave. And so there's a lot that you have to swallow and just accept before you even get into the actual story, like in the actual him going to a game world. And so for me, that part alone kind of took it down some points for me. And then we actually get into the 4 game worlds that he's going to. And again, a lot of this is an attempt to set up like an Oasis kind of world, where it's a multiverse of different types of games within the same system, just like the Oasis and Ready Player One. It's just that the author's trying to do it without setting it up. It's more of like a bunch of statements saying, this is what exists. This is a popular game. There's an AI here that the game company created to create a bunch of different virtual reality worlds that apparently they don't have access to as game creators. And the main character has to be sent in to save his old team. There you go. Accept it. And so for me, that kind of didn't resonate. And these game worlds, and even though the idea of a multiverse is really cool to me, that idea of it being there is cool, just like it was cool in the Oasis in Ready Player One. But the actual execution of this novel just falls flat to me. And it's because I'm expecting, as a LitRPG reader, and this being given to me as a LitRPG story, for these worlds to be LitRPG or RPG mechanics, and they just don't. And it's really sad because with the exception of like one Minecraft-like world, the rest are just sci-fi and fantasy simulations. And I just wish that there had been more game mechanics, and there are literally no RPG mechanics. I mean, well, I'll rephrase that. There are it's stated that there are supposed to be things like stats and levels and abilities and skills, but they're never actually shown to us. It's more like the authors or the characters are saying to each other that these things exist, but for the reader, they're hidden away, which is also a big issue in it not being LitRPG to me. And even that really overhyped virtual reality first-person shooter called Skirmish, even though like it's 12% of the first portion of the story and it's everybody talks about it, you never actually go there in that first section. And even though there's supposed to be RPG mechanics there, we're never shown that either at the beginning or at the end when it comes back again. And so it's just disappointing. And then the other worlds, which are like World 1 is an undead steampunk cowboy world. World 2, which is probably the most game-like world. It's a Minecraft clone. And it has some puzzles, but it actually shows the game mechanics for Minecraft in that you can destroy things by hitting them or using weapons. And you can also additively add things from like a hotkey bar. And that's probably the most game mechanics you get in the entire novel. Everything else, whether it's going to be the futuristic world where they're piloting mechs, or World 4 where they're like killing sand sharks, all of that is just more simulation. They get weapons, they kill things, and that's kind of it. And so for me, while there's plenty of action, there's some generally funny dialogue in here. The plot's a little predictable occasionally, but there's just no RPG mechanics, and that's a prerequisite to, being LitRPG. That's the RPG part of LitRPG. The fact that it's not there at all is kind of a big issue for me. And so even though it's not a bad story, and there's lots of potential in the story, the setup at the beginning was just too hard to understand and too hard to kind of accept just as statements without any kind of development of that world for it to be accepted as such. It was just kind of frustrating for me to read about these potentially cool game worlds and see that just with like a little more detail, with a little more revelation of game mechanics or development of like each world's own systems game mechanics, it absolutely could have been LitRPG, but because none of that exists, it's not, and that's unfortunate. As a VR story, it would get a 6 out of 10. Not bad, but that beginning kind of knocked it down anyways. But as LitRPG, which is what it was advertised to me as, and to the LitRPG Facebook groups, it isn't. So it gets a score 4 out of 10. There you go. Okay, that's it, folks. We're done. Finish finito. Remember, folks, always like the podcast. Make sure to like it on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and of course, sign up for Patreon if you want to help support us financially. Remember, you folks at home are the ones that are essentially funding this podcast at this point. So your support, every little penny or dollar helps to keep this podcast free of ads, and we'll just keep us going. So thanks a lot. And there are lots of ways you can support the podcast outside of money stuff. You can find all the ways to do so at litrpgpodcast.com/support. So thank you very much for listening, hanging out with me, folks. It's always happy to have you here. I'm on vacation currently, and I'll be coming back home pretty soon, though. So this is a temporary backdrop. There's lots of forest back there if you want to check it out. But until we can hang out again, remember, folks, to go read some LitRPG and have a nice time. Goodbye. Ramon Mejia from the LitRPG Podcast. Just getting all set up for the show. The thing that I do that you like that I do. That sounds like a song. Do-wop, 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 do-wop. It is LitRPG time. You know, the thing we like to do. There you go. That's your bonus material. Okay. Lemon base. Okay. Okay, that looks like we're all set. Gonna get going in 3, 2, 1.